Hi there, I'm Dr. Sue Johnson. I'm the developer of emotionally focused therapy, but especially in recent years, I've become obsessed with emotionally focused individual therapy, which is called EFIT. Isn't that a beautiful acronym, EFIT? To make everybody fit for a full life. That's what we're trying to do. So I'm delighted to be here talking to my friend Cole for PESI about I don't know, who I am, what makes me tick, stuff like that, stuff that you guys might be interested in. I got into therapy because it was fascinating. I got into therapy because I found it so rewarding to connect with people who were struggling. A lot of my work in the beginning was with disturbed adolescents. And, you know, on the one hand, they were so defended. On the other hand, they were so fragile. And I just found the whole challenge of connecting with them and understanding their world and understanding their struggles just fascinating. And then I got into working with couples. And the thing that fascinated me at that was, it was really obvious nobody knew how to do it. And I didn't know how to do it either. There were all these theories about, oh, teach communication skills. Well, I couldn't make that work. And, oh, well, what are they fighting about? It was obvious to me they're fighting about love. They're fighting about, you don't love me the way I need to be loved. Well, I can't love you because you're so difficult. Stuck, and I got enthralled. And the more people said, love's a mystery, and relationships are, impossible anyway, the more caught I got. And I started watching my couples obsessively. When I look back on it, I was quite strange, okay? I was a bit loopy, okay? I started watching couple sessions obsessively, and I felt like suddenly it became real obvious to me what the patterns were, what the dance was about, and what they were struggling with. So I just got totally hooked and fascinated and turned on. How can you not be fascinated by the discovery with people of their basic needs, their basic fears and longings? And then when I found attachment science, oh, that changed everything, because then I had a map. I understood what was going on. And people would say things to me and say, well, this is what I do. And I would say, of course, that makes perfect sense. It was such a relief to say that rather than, you do what? So then sessions became sort of safe adventures for myself and my clients. And still to this day, even though I mostly do EFIT right now, I learn from every client I see. I'm enthralled by every client I see and their struggles, how we turn ourselves into pretzels to avoid pain and somehow end up just going back into the same pain again. I'm fascinated, and it teaches, as I work with someone, I learn about what it is to be human. I learn about us and how stuck we can be, and also how amazing human beings are and how they can grow. So that's rather a long answer, but I've never got bored with therapy, and I've never got burned out. And in general, I think EFTers are a sort of passionate lot. So it might be interesting to ask people, how come you're so passionate? You're so weird. If you do make your sessions a safe adventure, you don't burn out, because you're turned on all the time. Right? You say, oh, wow, look at that. Oh, my God. Yes. Oh. Well, there's so many techniques out there. There's so many theories. There's so many tips. There's so many. I am biased when I say this, of course. All the research says that we change and grow when we're emotionally engaged. And I think that's true for therapists too. So I would say, find a model that moves you, that intrigues you, that grabs you and inspires you. And then put the energy in to do it well. You know, we're in love with quick fixes to complex problems. There aren't any quick fixes to complex problems. It's a lie. So, you know, go for something that moves you, that turns you on, and learn to listen to and attune to, dance with, listen to the emotional music your clients put out. They all have something to teach you. You know, in the university, I used to teach all kinds of other models to the beginning students. And of course, I'm biased, but it never failed to amaze me how these famous people who obviously had lots of incredible knowledge and wisdom and skills, from my point of view, would put transcripts in books, you know, about assessments and talking to clients. And from my point of view, they would completely miss the point. They would focus on information, they would focus on content, they would focus on diagnoses, they would focus on skills, when the client, from my point of view, was trying to tell them something very deep and significant about their emotional lives. And they would just go past it. So I would sit there thinking, I mean, I would teach it respectfully. You know, I believed in teaching my students more than one model. But when I would read some of those transcripts, I'd go, you missed it. You missed, look at that bit. You missed it. But, you know, one of my clients just said to me, it was perfect. She said, I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel. It's too difficult. And I can't live all numbed out. Yes, that's right. Well, let's stay there a whole bunch, because that's your enormous, enormous dilemma, isn't it? You're terrified of the pain of feeling, and you can't bear to be numb your whole life. So let's stay there. Let's stay there. Let's look at numb, what numb feels like, and when does numb feel good? And let's look at numb, and when do you go into numb? And let's look at feeling and what's going to happen if you feel. You know, and it's we're all the same as human beings, but we're all different. So yeah, I think therapists need to learn to listen and attune to their clients and respect their clients, not label them. From my point of view, most of the labels in the DSM are a complete waste of time. They delude us into thinking that we've understood somebody when we haven't at all. We've just labeled them. I'm English. I drink tea until I'm turning into a tea bag. I do like
You,
coffee, but you know, I'm English. The thing about England is, if the world was coming to an end and the planet was about to implode, the English people would say, "Put the kettle on. Let's have a cup of tea." Okay. That's a tricky one. Anything by John Bowlby. Um, the handbook of I haven't got the title right. The handbook of attachment, written by my wonderful colleagues Mario Michelanza and Phil Shaver, who talk about any of their newest books on attachment, who talk about this science, which really tells us who we are, how we get stuck, and how we can grow. Tells us what health is. It's the most profound developmental theory of personality ever written. And they take it and make it fascinating and interesting. So it's a little bit, you know, it's not how to do it. My favorite therapy book is The Primer that we wrote last year. We're very proud of it. Okay. And we had my wonderful colleague Leanne Campbell and I had incredible fun writing it. And we put lots of transcripts in it deliberately to say to people, look, this is what we do. You must, if you're going to teach therapy, you must show your work. otherwise it's like teaching somebody to dance without ever showing them you dancing. That's a silliness, isn't it? So you know, we put a lot of transcripts in there, and we're doing one on trauma now, and we'll put a lot of transcripts in again, because we say, this is what we do. We, you know, and we're at the point in EFT where we know from our research the key corrective moments, that where people change, which ends up predicting change at the end of therapy and good follow-up 3 years later. We know what these moments look like. We know how to create them. And, you know, we can show pieces of those moments to you in therapy. This is what we need to do in therapy. We need to be able to say, this is how people get stuck. This is how change happens. Look, see right now. Look what the therapist is doing to shape this new emotional epiphany that shifts how the person sees themselves, how they relate to others. Look, here it is. We need to be able to show it. Never mind, you know, what I call rabbiting on. You know, rabbits do this. Never mind rabbiting on about theory all the time and all kinds of abstract ideas. If I'm a therapist, it's like, okay, show me. Show me what you do. Show me how it makes a difference. And we're very proud of the fact that we can do that, right? So we do that in the primer. So that's my favorite book, Cole. That was an easy one, right? Oh, that's ever so easy. I'm a gardener, and I can spend hours. I have a big garden in my house in town in Victoria, where I live, which is a massively beautiful place on the west coast of Canada. And I have a garden here on my little island where I am right now, looking out at the sea, which is dry, rocky, and infested with deer. So if you're going to garden here, you're either mental or obsessed, okay? But I really like gardening. I can potter in the garden for you know, I go out there, I say, I'll just cut that rose a bit. And then 4 hours later, I think, oh, it's lunchtime. I like reading novels, which I think is the very best primer for therapists. I particularly like history. So if I hadn't been a English major and a psychologist, I would have liked to have been a historian. I'm fascinated by history. By the way, our patterns, we do the same thing again and again and again and again and again. I hope we learn from it, but I'm not sure we do. But I'm just fascinated by that. So I like historical novels, particularly historical novels about women. So I read novels. I sit on my exercise bike and sing with people like James Taylor, who I love, and Billy Joel, who I think is the best, and also Jim Croce, who sings sort of strange kind of, what is he, 70s songs? I don't know, but I love his sort of funky songs about, you know, evil men in Chicago, and you know, the beats are incredible. You can on an exercise bike. So I do that sort of thing. Those are my hobbies, and of course, being a therapist and being an extrovert, one of the things I do is talk to my friends a lot. You know, and my wonderful husband, who I am very blessed to be with after 35 years. That's easy, 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 Cole. Dogs. I've always, when I was a child, I didn't have any siblings. And because of the rather strange circumstances where I grew up in an English pub, I didn't have, on a sort of barren street, okay? I didn't have really any friends. I went to a school where everyone was upper class, rich, and Catholic, and I was poor, very, very not upper class and not Catholic. So, you know, I didn't exactly fit in. So I had no friends, but I did have my dog. And dogs have always been special to me. I've always had a buddy, a dog. I have 2 whippets at the moment. They're so beautiful. They're such beautiful animals. And, you know, the thing about dogs is they interact with you. I mean, cats are like, I'll take you or I leave you. You know, I don't really give a damn. I'm the most beautiful thing in the world. Well, but dogs are like, you know, are you gonna play? Are you gonna play? Like, you know, oh, I've come up on the bed in the morning, I'm putting my nose in your ear. You know, are you gonna pet me? Are you gonna pet me? Or like, you know, they're interactive, and so I really like that. But I think it's mostly just because I grew up with them. The interesting thing is if you watch how people engage with their dogs, fascinating. When I'm teaching validation to therapists, I say, don't validate the way a employer validates an employee doing a good report. Validate the way people validate their dogs. People say, good boy. Oh, wow. You're the most amazing dog. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You know, and the dog wiggles all over the place and goes into ecstasies. This is the way to do it. I used to be very much a night owl. I can't believe when I tell you this. I used to, like, you know, have 3 jobs and put my kids to bed. And about 10 o'clock at night, I'd walk into my study and I'd write until 1. And then I'd get up at 7. However, I have backed off a bit. And now I don't do that. I tend to go to bed earlier, like around 10, and meditate for a while or read and kind of decompress. And then I get up a little later. So I don't know what I am anymore. I used to be very much a night owl to the point where I think it was not healthy at all. But now I'm sort of in the middle. I don't know what I am. I've taken some of the pressure off me. You know, I've written so many books. I don't feel pressured to write another one right now. We have one on trauma that will come out, but I've done my bit for that. And so, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle now. I hope the next big thing is that we go back to basics and decide that we're going to understand who we are. And we start to take attachment science and all its wisdom and apply it to individual, couple, and family therapy, which is what we're trying to do in EFT. That should be the next big thing because it's gold. It's so specific and so broad and so deep. But it probably won't be because our field is about money and power and politics and territory and trendiness and the latest trend. I think people are very caught in the next big thing being psychedelic drugs. Personally, I'm not convinced at all by that. For one thing, if you're going to take somebody on a drug trip, you better be a really good guide. And I'm not convinced that we even know how to help people be good guides. So, and to be honest, I think it's, well, put it this way. This is going to sound terribly arrogant, okay? We don't need to put people on psychedelic drugs. We can take them to the heart of the matter by following their emotions and being with them in a particular way. We don't need psychedelic drugs. We get there anyway, and it's safer and it's more respectful. And so, but we go for what's trendy, and we go for what's politically accepted. You know, CBT has become almost acronym for therapy. Of course, CBT can be useful for people, and it is, especially for certain problems and certain kinds of people. But in general, I do not think it's the answer. You know, I don't think there's any model that is the answer, but, you know, I don't think it's the answer. So, but it's easy to research. And that's probably why it's become so popular. All the professors in the world need to get tenure, you know. So, you know, it's easier to research. You know, we're one of the few experiential therapies. Yeah, I think this is really massively true. We are one of the very few experiential therapies who have really good research. You know, mostly people who know how to go in and listen to your emotions don't know how to do research. Well, we do, and we do it constantly. We've just done a big study of EFIT. It's not out yet, but the results are good. Of course they are. We know where to go. We know how to take people home. So, yeah, so I'm not sure what will be the next. I think the main thing is, as therapists, we need to be concerned about data that says therapy is becoming more normalized. It's not so stigmatized. However, the data I read said that less people are coming for therapy and that people are turning instead to apps on their phone for tips. And I think this is an issue. I think as therapists, I personally think people desperately need therapy. They need connection more desperately than other, and our social world has gone off into the ozone and is not about connection anymore. It's about screens and fast and what they call multitasking, which is nonsense. You can't multitask, you're just massively distracted. But you know, so yeah, I think we need to pay attention to that and start looking at, wait a minute, we better do this stuff well, and we better be able to tell people how we do it well, because I think people really need us. The world really needs us. Well, when you say worked with, you know, in our externships, I used to see a couple I've never met before, and I'd only heard about very briefly, and I'd do a session with them in front of a camera. That was kind of hard. I remember a very stuck, belligerent couple. I think we made a training tape of them, actually. I can't remember the name. He was a trauma survivor, of course. He was a helicopter pilot, and he was just caught in numbing and dealing with his pain by himself. And his wife was very, 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 very angry. You know, she couldn't reach him. From her point of view, I think she'd lost him. And they were just caught in this terrible fight where they saw each other as the enemy. That was quite difficult. Irvin Yalom watched that session, which I loved. I love Irvin Yalom. And I said, what did you think, Irvin? And he said, Sue, you were heroic. I said, I was heroic. He said, yes, you just kept going in. I said, well, I don't know what else to do. He said, oh, all right then. But anyway, that was a very difficult couple, trauma couple, you know. But you know, I focus on current stuff. So I'm doing EFIT right now. I've just worked with a military vet, traumatized military vet with chronic pain, who came to Canada as a refugee, which sort of adds, you know, another dimension. And he's very difficult. He was fascinating. He said, he's very bright, incredibly bright. And he said to me, you're going to try and persuade me that you're just like every other therapist. You're going to try and persuade me that all these things that I've just said to you about me, like I'm disgusting, I'm a traitor, I'm pathetic, I'm weak, you've got this list was, so you're going to try and persuade me not to think that way, aren't you? And that I'm wrong. He said, well, you know what? It's a waste of time because I'm right. Okay. I thought, all right, okay, buddy. And then he told me, he said, therapists can't handle me anyway. They can't handle me anyway. I'm too intense. I'm too intelligent. I have my existential awarenesses. And I thought, oh, all righty. So my response to that deep inside is, oh yeah, well, get ready because I'm coming. Okay. So, you know, so he was fascinating and difficult because every time I felt like I was getting somewhere, he'd yes, but me. He'd go from touching an emotion to Oh, the most abstract. I mean, you know, a good job I'd read some of the existential philosophers, because honestly, like, you know, he'd leap to another plane. He'd yes but me. He'd argue with me. He'd change the subject. Oh, and I did begin to get a bit discouraged. And I said to my wonderful colleague, Leanne, would you please look at this tape? I mean, he gave me permission to do that, and tell me, is this gentleman as difficult as I think he is? Because I'm exhausted at the end of a session, which isn't like me. So she wrote back and said, oh, yes. Oh, yes, this gentleman is. However, we are showing session 11 with this gentleman in our upcoming course with PESI in the spring on consultation. And session 11, he finally let me in. And some of it was that I started to talk to him about our dance. I said, do you notice that every time I stay with an emotion that's difficult for you, you change the subject? Do I? Yes, you do. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to let you do that anymore, okay? So when I say stop, I want you to stop. And I want you to pause. And I'm going to go back and I want you to come with me. Is that okay? That took 10 sessions to get him to do that, okay? But he did start doing it. And then, of course, like most trauma survivors, I find anyway these days, you always think that underneath in trauma, there's going to be debilitating fear, uncertainty. Of course, there is. But more and more, the more kinds of trauma we work with, underneath most trauma is debilitating loss, grief, sadness, and the longing that comes up when you start to feel that sadness. The other side of that sadness, which is the longing that was never met, is so difficult. And he begins to go there. And once a client begins to go there, it's okay. So he was difficult, very resistant. You know, and the more resistant somebody is, it's simply that the more scared they are. My client in the primer book, Henny, she was difficult because she was the most traumatized person I'd ever worked with in my whole life. I could not figure out how she survived. I could not figure it out, and that made her fascinating. She was difficult because for the first 10 sessions, she wasn't present. She would say to me, I dissociate. I would say, yes. You know, like, but I'd say something that was kind of slightly close to where she was, and she would just look at me like a deer in the headlights and literally run, you know, change the subject, turn around, you know. And I understood that I was a threat, and closeness was a threat, and that she also got to the point in her life where she couldn't survive without it, and that dilemma was driving her crazy. So she was quite difficult, but she was a honor to work with. She had so much courage. You know, mostly I am inspired by my trauma patients, even when they're very difficult to begin with, what they've gone through and how they will struggle towards wellness. So, you know, difficult. I trust the model. And if you trust the model and you keep doing it, yes, things can be a little difficult in the beginning, but we just keep doing EFT and people come. You know, I mean, obviously, some people come fully open and grow like crazy. Some people come and they'll just grow as much as they can at the time. But we are used to getting results, and that helps a lot because I'm confident even when a client is difficult that it's all right, it's going to go somewhere, you know.